Scarif was a beautiful tropical world many would call idyllic, with its lush blue oceans, warm weather, and vast island chains. Despite this, the Empire used this seemingly unsuspecting world as a fortress which housed some of the Imperial's most important military secrets. But why Scarif? And why was this world actually perfect for the Empire's needs? Now, firstly, let's talk about the world. Scarif is in the far reaches of the southeast outer rim. It is incredibly remote, relatively small, with a diameter of around 9,000 kilometers. Now, this planet is actually pretty rich in metals and other minerals, which are essential for building, for example, starships and just about everything else in the galaxy. However, harvesting and using these materials was not financially viable. Simply put, the amount of distance to get the materials from Scarif to the vast shipyards in the core and mid-rim was ineffective because they could harvest these resources from countless other places. However, this provides something that the Empire needs, and that is privacy. You see, before the Battle of Scarif, the Empire was still somewhat governed by the Imperial Senate. Now, although these politicians had very little power in relation to Palpatine, they still played a vital role in the Empire of keeping the people of the galaxy in check. They offered a calming voice that made sure that the people of the galaxy thought that things were all okay, even as the Empire did unspeakable things. For this reason, the Empire had a pretty vested interest in keeping the senators of the Empire happy. Of course, Palpatine planned to disband the Senate once the Death Star was completed. And of course, there were people in the Senate who were against Palpatine, for example, Mon Mothma. And realistically, if they knew about some of the weapons and projects that the Empire was creating, for example, super soldiers, bioweapons, and of course things like the Death Star, then these senators would be very angry and would therefore cause civil unrest. Granted, if the Empire had a problem with one senator, they could probably just have them killed pretty easy. However, if word got out on a large scale that something like the Death Star was being built and a lot of senators spoke out against it, I definitely think that the Empire would probably kill and replace the senators, but the knock-on effect of that is the people of the galaxy would be in uproar. For this reason, privacy is something that the Empire needs, and having a planet in the middle of nowhere far away from prying eyes is very useful. It also gave a good cover story. If someone was to ask why there were Star Destroyers and huge amounts of troops been deployed to the middle of nowhere, then falsified records could easily be used to suggest that Scarif was in fact an active mining operation. Arguably, the Empire isn't there to protect all of its evil plans and work on its devastating projects. No, it's simply there providing protection for the minerals it needs. It's a good cover story. Now, this sums up why Scarif was a great location. However, there's a lot of other reasons why this very isolated world was actually perfect for what the Empire needed. Let's talk about the world's geography. It's mostly shallow reefs and oceans, and a few small volcanic island chains, and for this reason, it's pretty difficult for spies to actually be here. Realistically, most insurgents would have to hide out on one of these islands, and this is great because there just isn't a lot of places to hide simply because there's not a lot of landmass. No deserts to hide in, no mountain ranges, no particularly huge forests, and this meant that realistically the only people who were on the world are people who the Empire knows about. Aside from a few notable species, most species can't survive in the oceans. This was actually another reason why Kamino was also a very, very good location to have the cloning facilities, because launching an attack on Kamino meant that you needed to have specialist equipment to deal with the oceans, as there really was nowhere else you could go to hide. As well as this, the limited amount of lands mean that in the situation where a full-scale attack was happening, for example the one we see at the end of Rogue One, enemy forces are going to struggle to gain a foothold, as it has very limited landing areas. Think back to the Battle of Scarif. They got their soldiers there, but there wasn't really anywhere they could land and establish themselves to attack, which means that they were spread out and basically butchered. Attacking Scarif was never going to end well for the rebels. They were vastly outnumbered, and at the end of the day, they were never going to be able to retreat, set up counter-offensives, go on the defensive, because there just wasn't enough places for them to physically move. The rebellion does not have the capabilities to fight wars in the ocean. A lot of military forces out there don't, because it's an incredibly specialized environment. The Empire does, but there's no way the rebels have these resources readily available. We should also consider the Planetary Shield. This massive construction is very expensive and very difficult to set up, and Scarif's limited size will definitely have made this a far more viable option than, for example, if they used a larger world. It's actually why we don't see planetary shields used very often, because they are literally more than likely a nightmare. Think about the amount of power they must use, think about how difficult they must be to set up, maintenance, but Scarif, as I said, is a very small planet, and therefore this is an option. Now, finally, we need to consider the purpose the Empire had for this place. This was the epicenter for scientific research. Even the incomplete Death Star was moved here post-Geonosis to complete its construction. And we can imagine there's a lot of reasons why Scarif would be useful. A big one, for example, is the fact that it has metals, so if the Death Star construction project needed more metal, then it could easily get some from Scarif. However, there is another resource that is even more essential, and that is water. Scarif has a huge supply of it, and this is going to be required for, well, basically everything. Drinking, fuel, coolant, you name it. Simply put, water is always an incredibly important resource, both in the Star Wars universe and in our own. I am going to imagine that when they were building the Death Star on Geonosis, this was a problem that the Empire ran into numerous times because there's not a lot of water on Geonosis. It's probably why they were forced to use the Geonosians to actually construct it, because they were one of the few labor forces that could actually work in the desert environment. But not on Scarif. Scarif has a natural abundance of water that can be used for the construction of, well, just about anything they need, particularly the Death Star. Ultimately, I think Scarif was a great location for the Empire to hide its secrets, and it not only hid the Imperial's nefarious secrets from the Senate, but it also ensured that any attack force would likely never leave with their lives, all whilst providing an abundance of resources that, well, are just very useful. It really is the perfect world, if you will. But what do you guys think? What are the perks of Scarif? And what were the downsides? And what worlds do you think would be perfect for the Empire to hide its secret laboratories on? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please remember to like, share, and sub, as it is really appreciated and it helps the channel grow. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at @TheLoreGuy and tick the bell to get regular updates. But most importantly, thank you so much for watching this video today. I hope you're all having a great day. I hope you're all staying safe, and I'll see you next time.